everybody, welcome back to my Daily Dose with Tim. Today is Season 2, Episode 12. So as you can see, and then as mentioned yesterday, this is actually part 2 of a 3-part topic, and we're focusing on flipping. And flipping is actually one of the most popular strategies that's probably been heard around the world simply because of all the TV shows that we've seen. However, just remember that doing a renovation, doing a flip deal in real estate doesn't just take half an hour or an hour, okay? Just remember that. Now, today we got a lot of stuff to cover because it's all about deal analysis, as I mentioned yesterday. And so yesterday we actually spoke about a little bit of a reminders, ground rules, if you will. Now, the first thing is you need to always remember when it comes to buying any property as an investment opportunity, rule number 1 has always been to make money in the buy. So this is something that we touched on yesterday. Make money in the buy. And so today, from a deal analysis perspective, I'm going to continue to build upon the 3 different ground rules that we said yesterday as well, okay? So let's get this going. First thing first, we always say make money in the buy. And one of the biggest questions, the most popular questions that most people ask is, well, how do you actually determine whether or not you're making money in the buy? Well, first thing first, if you're walking into a sales center or a show home, chances are you're not making money in the buy unless the builders are actually a little motivated, meaning that they might be a little desperate to sell the property. Once again, if that's the case, you might need to be a little bit more careful as well because you still don't have control over the full process, okay? Because a lot of times when we buy something that's brand new, we're basically buying retail. And buying retail a lot of times for uneducated investors or just recreational investors or amateur investors is simply because of the fact that they do want the layer of warranties that comes with it. So if a builder is already a little bit motivated, meaning they could actually be financially distressed. So you might not actually be doing yourself any favor at all. So what we always look for is really, let's just say today we're going to be focusing solely on getting distressed property, as in the property itself is actually slightly distressed and it needs a little bit of a facelift. It needs a little bit of work to bring it back up to condition. And so making money in the buy a lot of the times is really determined based on what we call the difference between the after repair value, okay? ARV, after repair value. Whoopsie. Okay, a little too tight there. Versus the current purchase price. Okay? Versus the current purchase price. And after repair value, a lot of the time should be determined based on what we call CMA. Or a lot of you may have heard it as comps. At the end of the day, it is based on the most recent sold comparables. If you are getting data based on what's actually being offered to the marketplace, meaning they're active listings and not sold listings, you're actually not looking at the most realistic comps. Because at the end of the day, what determines a fair market value? Okay, a fair market value is established when a willing buyer and a willing seller come together. Because again, somebody can ask to sell their property, I'm just going to throw a random number as an example, for $500,000. However, there is nobody that's willing to spend $500,000 to buy that property. Is that the actual comp or the fair market value? No. As a result, the seller probably will go down to $490, or maybe the buyer will negotiate and make an offer and said, you know what, Mr. Seller, I'm going to buy it from you for $475,000 because that's what I think it's worth. And after a little bit of negotiation, the seller and the buyer come to a conclusion that they will conclude the transaction at $480,000. And when that $480,000 transaction has completed, then now we have a fair market value established on the goods, in this case, exchanged. Okay? So this is how we actually determine that. And yesterday, as we mentioned, the purchase price versus the ARV, we're looking at how much, we're looking at how much in difference. 40 to 70 cents on the dollar. So it's 40 to 70% to what the ARV is. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is let's go into a quick example here. Let's just say that you're in a market and you found a property in a neighborhood where the sold comps is about $500,000. So what that means is the current purchase price is $200,000 all the way to $350,000, depending on how much work is needed and how much profit are you looking to make. So there are different ways to actually run your deal analysis when it comes to doing a flip opportunity. So let's keep this trend going for a little bit, shall we? So let's just say that, you know what? Assuming that we're not getting it at the low end, which is 40%, 40 cents on the dollar, or we're not getting it on the high end. Assuming that we actually pick up this property with an actual purchase price right now of $320,000. Okay? And then what's going to happen is when you have $500,000 and then you pay $320,000 for, remember, the premise is always the fact that this property actually needs a little bit of work, which means you have renovations that you got to consider. And it all depends on what you're looking to do with the property. Most commonly, if it's a cosmetic job on a single family, detached or maybe semi-attached property, or semi-detached depending on the market that you're in, it basically means the same thing. There's a shared wall somewhere, okay? And so depending on how much work you're actually doing. Now, for some of you, especially if you're in, let's say, the Ontario market in Canada, then you call it duplexing. On the west side here between Alberta and British Columbia, we call it suiting. And in the US, generally speaking, most of you call it suiting a property as well, meaning that there is one title, however, it's two separate doors, two separate living spaces, meaning if you want to hang on to the property, you are able to have two different families in there, two different independent leases. So I just gave you a whole bunch of reference points in terms of how you can actually determine that. However, it is one title, okay? So out west right now, I understand when we say a duplex, it actually means one structure, one shared wall, however, two different units and two different titles. That's the major difference. However, right now, what we're speaking to, really generally speaking, is our single family home, and it doesn't actually require any suiting, it doesn't actually require any duplexing process. We're just really fixing up the cosmetic work. And so let's just say single family home, typical 3-bedroom, 2.5 bath. So 2.5 bath usually means that in the master ensuite or in the master suite, there is an ensuite built in. And then there's a main bathroom that's typically shared with the other bedrooms, let's say for the kids living in the same house. And then there is a half bath. A half bath, typically speaking, means a toilet and a sink where you can wash your hands, and that's about it. And that's usually on the main floor of most living spaces. That's a very, very common structure there. It depends on the market that you're in, the type of property that's actually in demand in the market that you apply the strategy in. Most of these properties are ranging around 1,000 to about 2,300 square feet. Okay, 1,000 to 2,300 square feet. These are your very typical single family homes that you can apply this strategy in. So obviously you can see, if you want to do cosmetic renos on 1,000 square feet property versus something that's just a bit over double, the rental budget would definitely be very different. Okay, today what I'm going to do is I'm going to stick to the 1,000 range for now. However, that 1,000 can also be a bungalow with a basement. So 1,000 almost can still mean depending on what the finished space is like in the basement. So I just want you to take that into consideration, okay? Now, depends on the labor and material cost. It might be very, very different, and the split will be drastically different from market to market. So what I mean by that is so many of you guys want me to provide a general number in terms of, okay, what should I really be budgeting for if it's 1,000, okay? I will say this, in our market, which is Alberta, Canada, I usually like to budget about $40. Okay, $40 per square foot for development or for cosmetic renovations. So right off the bat, $40 per square foot. See, my ESL is coming out now. $40 per square foot at 1,000 square feet. Then you're looking at about $40,000 to get that job done. And that usually can get you some pretty decent results. And some might even argue, oh my God, at $40,000 in my market, I can get a lot more things done than just cosmetic. And this is why, again, I don't typically like to do that, because and thanks, you know what, oh my God, thank you. I'm just gonna say Andrea, I won't say your last name. Thank you for your comments, because one of the best comments that I've received so far between the 2 seasons is that a lot of you guys understand I'm creating something that's timeless here, in the sense that I want to give you the formula, and you have to plug in your own market realities a lot of the times, and that's totally okay, because this is something that is actually really universal. The most important thing is your thought process, is the formula, because this is a formula that has worked and that stood the test of time. It's been tried and tested over the last few decades now when it comes to investing in real estate, okay? So let's put it this way. If we were using that budget as our foundation, and as I mentioned, 1,000 square feet, I'll just say that we're putting in $40,000 worth of work, okay? Now, if you budget $40,000 worth of work, or rather, this is the quote that you've gotten from your contractor that you're going with, well, guess what? Depending on how well your general contractor quotes you, we typically like to add a little bit of contingency funds, meaning rainy day funds in case things go sideways. So what that means is sometimes when they're doing something on the job site, there's so many things that are unpredictable, okay? They could be going in to rewire a lighting fixture only to find out that maybe the electricals need to be completely updated, whatever the case may be. Or when they're replacing the flooring, they maybe find some other issues in the subfloor region, or worse yet, we found termites. We found different issues. We've also opened up some drywalls just to do some repair work, and found a completely dead bee nest. And even though, again, it's completely dead, you still got to remove it, you got to do a lot more cleaning, you got to re-insulate it, all that stuff, okay? You always want a contingency in there. So most popular number to factor in is 10% right off the bat. Now, speaking of the $40,000 quote, make sure before you actually have a standard crew that you work with in a particular market, before you get into any market, you always want to at least get 3 different quotes. At least 3 different quotes from 3 different general contractors, 3 different builders, 3 different construction companies. Again, depending on where you are. We live in Canada, we call them general contractors, and as you guys know, we invest across the pond in the UK as well. They call them builders. For us, builders are the ones that build buildings and big houses right from the get-go. However, depends on where you are, doesn't matter. You get the idea, okay? Make sure you get 3, if not more, quotes in the beginning. And at the end of the day, what you really want to look at is value. The money does not always determine everything. We're not always looking for the cheapest option. However, does it mean that we have to go with the most expensive? Not necessarily. If it does happen to end up like that because the most expensive quote really gets the job done and to give you that finished product, then you understand that's what you have to do. However, let's look at the numbers first, because at the end of all of this, remember, we're investors first and foremost, which means you gotta let the numbers do the talking. Okay, so 40,000 plus your 10%. Remember, there are also something that we call fees. Okay, today I'm not even going to factor in borrowing money yet. We're going to build upon it as we go. So I'm going to assume that you guys have the $320,000 borrowing capacity or cash even. Okay, I know you're probably going to laugh at me a little bit, a lot of you. However, I'm just going to put that aside for today, just to demonstrate the calculations first, and then we are going to factor in different considerations in terms of how we structured the deal as we go into tomorrow when we do a deeper dive into this. Okay, so 40,000 plus 10% is your reno, and then you have fees. What are these fees? Well, in the beginning, you have what we call closing fees. So let's say even if you have the money, great. When you close a deal, you have to hire a lawyer to help you do the transaction, complete the transaction, transfer title, do the title research, and then register you as the new owner on title, for example. So you have that depending on which market that you live in, okay? You typically are budgeting about $2,000 on average, sometimes higher, sometimes lower, usually for a run-of-the-mill single-family homes in North America, you're looking at about $2,000 upfront, okay? And depending on the province or areas and markets that you're in, you might have land transfer fees. So basically, it depends on where you are. Again, in the UK, they call it stamp duty. Basically, when you acquire a piece of property, you're required to pay that tax. So it really just depends on where you are. So in the province that I live in, we actually don't have anything like that. However, you need to remember to add that in. And the other thing is, okay, you have to inspect the property. You might want to get it appraised, especially if you're actually buying this cash. If you're actually borrowing money from a lender, meaning you get a mortgage, they will likely do the appraisal. Okay, they will likely do the appraisal. However, even if they don't, and if you're able to buy something cash, you need to make sure that you budget in inspections, you budget in appraisal yourself. And that usually amounts to about roughly $1,000 right there these days. So there you have it. And the next thing that you always want to remember, okay, is holding cost. Most people forget about this. Okay, and because we are not dealing with debt servicing right now, we're not going to talk about your interest. However, when you're hanging on to a property, remember, you have property taxes, you have property insurance, and you also have utilities at the very minimum that you have to maintain. Because, well, you still need the utilities for your general contractor so that they can plug in their chainsaws, they can plug in whatever tool that they need to, right, to get the work done. And the water needs to be running, all that kind of stuff. So these are the minimum that you have to take into consideration, okay? So I'm just gonna show you that, let's say this property right now on a monthly basis, you're looking at property taxes plus insurance plus utility, you have about $800 on a monthly basis. And yesterday, remember, when we were going over some of the ground rules, we also talked about the fact that if it's just purely cosmetic, we're looking at about 8 weeks' time. But between acquisition, the actual reno work, plus the selling period, a lot of the times we like to budget for 6 months. Okay, if you happen to be in a market that's actually pretty hot and you can get rid of the property a lot sooner, great. Because then what that means really is that you've created that buffer for yourself. Okay, it's like finding that $20 in your pants or in your shorts in the dryer sometimes. When you get to finish a project early, you basically find more money. However, we want to be very safe and as secure as we possibly can, because this is all about taking calculated risk. So we're calculating that in up front. And so right here, let's say times 6, okay? So $800 per month times 6. The other thing that I want to remind a lot of you guys though is that if you already know your exit strategy is to hang on to the property after renovation is done, great. Insurance should be your regular insurance. However, I would still highly recommend that you disclose that to your insurance provider when you are doing the renovation work. Okay, right now we're going through a little bit of cosmetic upgrades and then we're going to rent it out later on. Most insurance providers, they're okay with just giving you a regular rental insurance coverage. However, there will be insurance providers that say, okay, you know what, that actually falls under a completely different class of insurance. And if, like what we were saying, like what we're discussing and focusing on right now, which is really flipping properties, meaning your intention is not to keep the property afterwards, you have to disclose that to the insurance company when you're getting insurance. And guess what? As much as we don't like it, what that means is that insurance payment actually is going to go up as opposed to getting a regular rental property insurance for this. However, remember, better safe than sorry. Better safe than sorry. I've seen so many people that during the construction period, something goes sideways, contractors get hurt. Yes, you always want to hire contractors that are licensed, insured, and bonded themselves. However, there's always going to be liabilities, and this is what they call insurance. Things will happen when you least expect them as well. So make sure that this is not something that you skip out on. Don't be cheap. This is one of the biggest lessons that one of my mentors always stressed on. Don't be cheap, because you never know when it's going to come back and bite you in the assets. And another friend of mine, she always said, if you pay peanuts, you're going to get monkeys. And that goes back to who you hire to do your jobs as well. Okay, just make sure that you treat all of your power team members as actually partners in the deal with you. It's never about racing to the bottom. It's always about value, value, value. Okay, so same thing here. Make sure that you understand your coverage, and if the intention is to flip right off the bat, you need to make sure that your insurance broker and insurance provider understand that perfectly. Okay? Now, after this, let's not forget, unless you're a licensed estate agent, realtor, whatever you want to call yourself, chances are you're going to have to pay somebody a commission. And even if you are a licensed real estate agent yourself, you might not have the buyer yourself either, which means somebody else is going to be coming in to bring in a buyer to actually buy the property off of your hand. Okay? Oh, thank you, Auntie. So holding after holding, when you're selling, okay, when you are selling, then you need to consider all the fees for you to exit the deal, and that means your realtor commissions. And once again, you also need legal fees as well. And legal fees, we're going to budget for $2,000 once again. In most cases, legal fees when you're selling something are usually lower than when you're buying something in this case, okay? Why is that? Simply because of the fact that when you're buying a property, it is your lawyer's job to make sure that the title is actually clean, and so that if there are any issues that have already been identified as pre-existing, you are not taking on that liability down the road as well. And one of the things that's outside of the lawyer's scope, which happens a lot, is checking on utilities. Checking on the utilities, okay? It's something that we'll talk about a little bit more when we're dealing with wholesale and assignment, meaning how we write our contracts or offer to purchase later on. So here you have it. So you can see I'm actually not completing the deal analysis just yet because I want to build in some more factors tomorrow with you. However, this is really the thought process in terms of how you can engage and get into a flip opportunity, leveraging real estate. And so this is flipping an actual property. When we're dealing with wholesale assignment, we're really flipping papers now. So it's that whole control without owning concept, and yet makes you feel quite powerful, I'm not gonna lie. So I hope this was clear to you and that we're really building up on the idea and the topic of flipping. So tomorrow we're gonna take a deeper dive into this and complete the whole section on flipping as well. So thank you so much for watching this episode today with me. I know I've gone way over my usual time budget. However, I appreciate your participation, and I thank you for your participation, for your likes, for your comments, and for your shares. I'm just baffled some days that so many of you guys have been so kind about sharing this. And what that's really telling me is that there is value that you're getting out of this. And I so appreciate you validating that. So keep it up, keep it going, keep sharing this with the people that you think can really learn and benefit from the content. And with that said, thank you so much again. I will see you tomorrow. Live well, everybody.